In addition to her 12-year career with OSU, Sharon also served as the interim director, deputy director of Seattle King County Public Health for 5 years and was Washington State's director of mental health for 7 years. She has a certificate in gerontology from the University of Washington and is a National Association of Home Builders certified aging in place specialist. Sharon is a frequent public speaker in Southern Oregon on age-related issues and is known through her weekly column, Healthy Aging, in the Medford Mail Tribune and the Ashland Tidings. Her well-regarded 5-module online series, Mastery of Aging Well, was developed while she was with Oregon State University and remains a community-based educational tool for older adults and their families. Sharon's award history includes the Public Health Genius Merit Award. If I got that one, it'd be on a big plaque, right? And the American Society on Aging's Award for Innovation and Quality. I'd like to introduce Sharon Johnson.
What I like to do when I talk about memory, and I started doing that maybe, 10, 12 years ago, and as I get older and older, I turned 68 a couple weeks ago, it's a really much more important thing for me to be talking about and thinking about. And one of the things that happens with memory as we age, one of the important positive impacts is anything aerobic. Chocolate, vitamin D, things that Robin mentioned just now is absolutely important. But anything that we can do that's aerobic. And laughter is aerobic. You know, aerobic with oxygen, things like swimming and dancing and walking and laughing. So let me try my favorite memory-related story. See what you think. This is a story about 2 older women who were in a car and they were driving and they go through a red light. And the passenger thinks, oh my gosh, we just went through a red light. And they keep on driving. It happens again, another red light. And the passengers think, oh my goodness, another red light. Happens a 3rd time and she turns, she said, Mildred, do you realize we just went through 3 red lights? And Mildred turns and says, oh, am I driving? So for the next 21 minutes or so, I'm driving, and we're going to talk about this business of memory and aging. And I call this talk different things in different places. In fact, when they called me and reminded me that this event was today, I said, what was the title of that again? Because sometimes I call it memory difficulties, should I be worried? Or memory difficulties, what if I can't remember what I forgot? I'll tell you about that one, because sometimes it does happen. But with memory, the kinds of things that are happening as we age, first of all, our processing is just slower. And think about it, I have a gerontologist friend, Dr. Vicki Schmal, and she puts it like this. She says, your brain is like a library, and a big old library has more books. And it just takes longer to retrieve a book from a big old library. To me, that just is so comforting, because memory difficulties are unsettling. No matter what's going on with you, if you put a hot pad in the refrigerator, or if you walk into the kitchen and you have not a clue what you're doing there. This morning we were so hectic in our household. We have a booth down here, first time we've ever, with our nonprofit, had a booth. I made half the bed, and then I opened the door for the dog to go out and then shut it before she could get out. Now, those kinds of things are part of what happens with aging. Processing is slower, delayed recall of names. We just can't, it's that tip of the tongue syndrome. We just can't remember. What was it? When I'm in a grocery store, because I write my column and my picture's in the paper, people sometimes know me and I don't know them. And I'll be in a grocery store and they'll wave at me and they'll start, and I just hope and hope and hope I can remember their name before I get to them. And I'm always so delighted. I'll reach out my hand and smile. I'm so delighted when they say, I'm so-and-so, because then I have it. And if they say, Eloise, I know from times past, hi, Eloise, I'm Sharon. It's so nice to meet you. If I say Eloise's name 3 times, the likelihood that I'm going to keep remembering it is far greater. So if there's really a name that you want to remember, really important for you to remember, then you can say it 3 times, or the littlest trick in the world is to write something down or to put it on your little telephone. So what I'm going to do in my remarks in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to hide 3 things as I proceed. And at the end, I'm going to ask who can remember where I hid them. And if you can remember it, the first hand I see will get it. So writing things down. This is a lovely little colored notepad and pen. If you write something down, I'm going to hide it right up here in plain sight. If you write something down, like a grocery list when you go to the grocery store, and you leave it on the counter, even if you don't put it in your pocket or your purse or whatever, leave it on the counter, you're more likely to remember that you wanted to get bananas and milk and Tide at the store if you've just written it down once. So thinking about names or things that you're going to do is important. What's also true about, and I'm following this outline right here, learning takes longer. And I've done some graduate work in my 50s and 60s, and it's way different than it was in my 20s and 30s. It's just learning takes longer. If I had my 12-year-old niece sitting up here, and I was sitting here, and we were both supposed to learn, let's say, a computer program. And we were both given the information, and we just sat here. She would learn it much more quickly than I would. I would learn it. I would come to know it, but it would take me longer. And I shouldn't feel badly about that. It just kind of comes with the aging territory. And then the big thing on what's happening is distractions. Distractions are incredibly intrusive as we age. It's so easy to, well, for example, if these windows were open and I heard the music that was down there or the sounds that were down there, my ability to remember what I'm going to say to you today would be very compromised. If you are talking to someone and someone else interjects something, it's very easy to go all the way around and not even remember where you are. And that's typical. I mean, the message here is these things are typical. These are the kinds of cognitive changes that happen as we age. Now, bigger things can happen too. And obviously, we're not talking about dementia or Alzheimer's today. If you're in this room listening to this, the likelihood that you have anything to worry about in that regard is pretty small. Because people who have major cognition problems usually don't reach out and just want to solve a little memory problem. So the things here, what's happening and why, possibly it's happening because you've not listened well enough. And possibly if you're older, you're hearing impaired. And so you're having trouble listening, or you're not wearing your hearing aids, or your battery ran out. So listening is a very important part of remembering. And listening is, when they use the word encoded, it means that you think about it. You commit it to something. There's a technique called Roman room where you memorize something in a strange kind of way. When I've used that technique, when I've tied things to rooms in my house in order to remember them when I go to the store, sometimes I can remember that stuff for decades. It's just amazing. It's a little problem, and anyone who wants to know that, come down to our booth and I'll tell you about the Roman room technique. But what happens with us is that we really want to, it's kind of like snap connect, kind of like a photograph. You want to remember something, just picture it in your mind. And, or maybe why we don't remember things is we've got too much to remember. And think about that brain is like a library thing. We've got a lot more ways to think about things and do things and remember things than our parents or our grandparents did. We've got all this stimulation, and that kind of stimulus overload can make it difficult to remember. Or remembering might be difficult because the things that you want to remember are too similar or too different. And I have discovered something. We moved in the past week, and we had lists for everything, and I thought, oh, this, the listing thing is just great. And it was, except I found that we had so many things on the list that I had to divvy them out. I had to chunk them out and categorize them, or I was just having more trouble remembering than less trouble. Come ahead and sit down. So that's the context for we've all got some memory issues going on. Actually, 100% of people over age 65 have some sort of remembering challenge. And just kind of knowing that might make you feel a little bit better about the reality that it is true. But we can always do, small things count, we can always do things about this. And if you don't want that unsettling feeling to be overwhelming you, and none of us do, then what do you do about it? So how can you improve your memory? And I'm going to give you some little and big ideas that might help you do that. First of all, it's the remembering requires focus. And that means that sensory focus, your connection, if I look somebody in the eye, if I meet somebody, remembering that I should say their name 3 times. Hi, I'm Sharon.
I'm Kate.
Kate? Kate, it's nice to meet you. And if I focus on something someone says or someone you meet, the likelihood that you're going to kind of embed that in your thinking is far greater. And when we have so much distraction around us, it's going to be hard today, unless you maybe have a sheet of paper to take home with you or a prize that you get in one of the booths. There's a lot going on out there. And so another way of focusing might be to scan the booths and say, which are the 1 or 2 that I really want to know more about? Maybe I want to know more about Food and Friends. You know, I'm going to hang out there, I'm going to get their stuff, I'm going to talk to them, I'm going to focus, I'm going to think. Anytime that we can triage, if you will, come really close to something, be it a person, be it a word, be it a thing that you want to remember. Next thing here is restorative rest enhances memory. And I used to give a 2-hour seminar on memory, and I would list all the things that were important. And at the end of it, somebody would always say to me, so what's the most important one of all those? All those things you listed, what's the most important? And I used to say rest. I used to say 7 to 8, maybe 9 as you get older, hours of sleep each night are the most important. And think about that. If you are not well rested for whatever reason, maybe you're worried about something, maybe you're grieving something, maybe you've had to drive across country all night, whatever the reason, and you will find undoubtedly that you feel more confused, more settled, and less clear about things. So rest is a really important thing. So just monitoring your own rest or eating well. Eating well. I mean, this is something the PowerPoint, if I had it, would pop up bagels and cake and donuts, and that's not eating well. I sometimes say, so do you want to be a glazed donut or do you want to be an apple? Sticky, mushy, overly sweet glazed donut, crisp, crunchy, brightly colored apple. You may not want to be an apple, but you want to eat an apple, or you want to eat nutrient-dense food. You want to eat the kind of food that has color, just awash in color, red, green, the brightest you can get. This, and I'm going to hide this too, this is a green pepper. Isn't that lovely? I have a friend who's diabetic. She doesn't eat a lot of apples because they're high sugar for her. She eats green peppers though, and she would take this and just eat it just like an apple. She is just, she's a model for all of us. So green pepper would be a good example of nutrient-dense eating, and I'm going to hide this green pepper under this chair over here. Green pepper under the green chair, which is another way to remember things, associate with them with something else. So nutrient-dense eating means that you really think about what you eat, that you don't just have that cookie because it's on the counter. You think about, I'm going to have that cookie. I like that cookie. I'm not going to have 2, but I'm going to have 1. I'm going to enjoy every bite. And I'm going to have the cookie not just because somebody I know made it and they want to give it to me. I'm going to have it because I like it. I'm going to really be discriminating about what I eat. The more colorful, nutrient-dense food that we can eat. Michael Pollan, the journalist, but it's really a nutritionist in his heart, says, Eat food, not so much, mostly plants. So think about that in terms of memory too. Smoking and alcohol affect memory, and in a couple of different interesting ways. Now I said rest well, eat well, don't smoke. That's kind of a good idea for all of us. If you do, the research supports stopping by the age of 43, gives you much more benefit. So smoking causes cognitive problems. And knowing that might help you convince somebody who is a smoker to step back and say, whoa, nope. The other thing, alcohol has an effect on memory. Interesting research in that if it's moderate consumption of alcohol in any form, not just red wine, it actually enhances memory ability. Moderate is the key word there, and so you need to be really thinking about that as you proceed. The newest research, when I said people used to say, what helps memory? And I'd say, well, I think rest is one of the more and most important. Aerobic exercise, and Louisa's, I'm sure, going to talk about breathing. If you were to, well, let me try hiding my third item here. If you were to take a little bit of rosemary and breathe deeply and smell it, it would kind of heighten your sense of clarity, mental clarity. I'll pass this around. People can do this, and I will hide this bag, and I will put this over here by the light switch on the floor there. And just, think about that. As that passes by, it might not work for all of you, but it might give you that little... medical conditions affect memory. So anytime you can think about or look at what are the medications I'm taking, or if your doctor says, hey, I think we got a little blood pressure issue going on here, how about taking a medication for that blood pressure? And one thing you might say is there something else I can do that wouldn't require me to take that medication? And if there is, like walking, eating differently, whatever, do it. Or you might say, is that possibly a medication that would cause memory difficulties? I already have some memory difficulties. And having that discussion about that, looking at your medications, the interactions and the problems and the possibilities that they could be the underlying reason for this difficulty that you're having remembering your daughter-in-law's name, or your dog's dog food. I mean, they're the little things that just bug us. My husband, we have a new dog. We actually have her with us today. She's a little puppy, she's very cute. We had a previous dog who was also very cute, who has a new and wonderful home years ago, and that was male. My husband cannot seem to remember that this new dog, whose name is Lucy, is female. It's just he's just having a lot of trouble with that. And all the things that I've mentioned so far might help with that. If I just put Lucy's name on a slip of paper on his desk, that might be enough for it. Or if I correct him all the time and say, it's a she, not a he, that's probably not going to help. If you're having memory issues and somebody is going, ugh, every time, raising their eyebrows every time you say something inappropriately, that's going to make you feel even less settled about it, more unsettled about it. So be cautious about that. If you have someone like that in your life, sit down with them and say, these are better ways that we can deal with that. If you have, however, if our son were to call and say, Dad's having a lot of trouble remembering stuff lately. And if my sister in Georgia were to say, when I talked to Howard on the phone last week, he just didn't seem to remember some stuff I thought he would. That's what I call the rule of three. If there are 3 different people in 3 different contexts that are identifying there is a memory-related challenge going on, then that should be like a flashing yellow light. And that doesn't mean it might mean that there's medications that you're taking that you should be thinking about differently. It might mean you haven't had a green pepper or a piece of broccoli or a bright red crispy apple in a lot of years, days, months. So flashing yellow light if that rule of 3 kicks in. And then improving memory, how can I improve it? Things like this, like today. socially connecting with other people. I used to be a Food and Friends volunteer, and I would bring a food at noon to someone who was most typically kind of house captive. They were just not, they weren't going anywhere. I was the one who came. Now, the possibility of that person not socially connected at all except through me having memory difficulties was far greater than if she had been out on her porch with her neighbors, or she'd been talking on the telephone with her daughter. All the things, socially connected stuff. There's a Harvard professor who says the best thing you can do for your memory is go shopping. Go shopping. She says, you're walking around a store, you're connecting with people. This is permission to go out and buy something. You're calculating, can I afford that? You're doing all the things that just keep us engaged and active. You're focusing on that new red blouse that I really want to buy. That kind of thing can make a difference. So, things that really help, special practical things that really help. Start with obviously doing what you're all doing so well right here, listening. Just listening carefully. Putting your hearing aids on, having the batteries in them, listening well to what's being said. The individual who is with us in our little booth here today for Age-Friendly Innovators his name is Dr. Gail Myers, and he is 91 years old. And he's hearing compromised. If he were here right now, he'd be fine with my saying this. And it's tough for him. He walks with a cane. He's down there because he's on our board and he just wanted to support us, and he's there. But it's tough for him because he's getting the distraction from the music that's playing right around the corner. And he's sitting on one of these metal chairs, or we brought a different one, but he kind of goes back and forth. And, he's kind of on wobbly ground. All these things that for someone who's age 91, who already has sensory challenges, then has some distraction playing out, his ability to focus is going to be harder for him. But I'll bet you anything, if you go down there and talk to him, he'll be right with you. He'll be right on you. He'll read your lips and he'll just tell jokes. And so it's a practice thing that we can get to really listen carefully. Think about what you want to remember. Repeat it out loud. If when Robin was speaking earlier, and I wanted to remember the lion's mane mushroom, I kind of said it mentally to myself out loud, and then I took out my iPhone and made a little note that was the lion's mane mushroom that I wanted to remember. Anytime that you really focus and I want to be able to call that up later. If I can't, I'm going to feel frustrated by it. And so you want to do what you can. I have a man who goes to my church who writes something he wants to remember on the ballot. This is his Palm Pilot. So another thing about what really helps is looking for a cause. And medications are a big part of that. So it could be you didn't get enough rest, it could be you aren't eating well, it could be you're grieving and depressed about something, or it could be those new medications that you're taking. So the cause often can be a newly added medication that might not have any memory difficulties attached to it or possibility of memory difficulties, but its interaction with something you're already taking, non-prescription or prescription, it might. So seeing somebody like Robin, going to your local pharmacist. I think pharmacists are your most accessible health providers. I mean, where else can you go into a grocery store, stand at a pharmacy counter, wait for a few minutes and talk to a clinician? It's amazing. So asking about that, looking for the cause and finding out. Link new information to past memories. When we moved into our new neighborhood just last week, a woman came over to welcome us, and I really wanted to remember her name, but I didn't have pen and pencil handy, and I was doing a lot of different things, and her name was Janie. And so I hooked her up in my mind to the name of Janie, another Janie I knew that had blonde hair. I made that kind of association in my head, that sort of visual association. Anytime you can link it to something else. If you meet someone named Rosemary, and you immediately think of the Rosemary that you knew in high school, or your daughter's name or something like that, then those links can be easier to make. Things that help are seeking mental stimulation in some form. And there has been a lot of Sudoku and crossword puzzle, and those things are fine. But they're not as good as aerobic activity. So do the crosswords puzzle while you're walking. Think about what are the ways, what's my favorite, follow your passion, what's my favorite aerobic activity that I want to do. If you don't like to swim, don't swim. If you don't like to walk, don't walk. If you like to laugh, then just figure out how you can just go someplace and laugh, 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 laugh. So find that aerobic activity and then just do incrementally more of it. Like 5-10 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day of aerobic activity is going to give you a whole lot of mental oomph. So find that mental stimulation. Toss chaos out of your life. If you have a really disorganized environment, as you age, that lack of organization is going to take its toll. I actually label all the things in my pantry now. Not that I don't know what brown sugar looks like versus powdered sugar, but it's helpful. I don't have to worry about, oh, I'm almost out of brown sugar, I think, or where is the rest of it? Anytime you can get the chaos out of your environment. I have a story that I tell about a 85-year-old woman who I visited with a few years ago, and she was telling me a story, and she said, oh, let me show you a picture. And she got up and she walked with difficulty over, and she stood by the rosemary. No, I'm standing by the rosemary. She stood by a chest. She opened it out, and wonder of wonders, took a photograph album, opened it to the picture, came over, showed it to me, finished the story. I was very impressed. It was a great picture, fit her story beautifully. And then when she was done, did she leave it right on the table in front of us? No. She went up, she went back, she put it back in the drawer. Anytime, the more organized we can stay, the less difficulty we're going to have with memory issues. Look, snap, connect. There's a whole theory, the Memory Bible by Dr. Gary Schmall, the Longevity Bible. He talks about taking that little picture in your mind when you want to remember something. Just, it's almost like looking at it well, clicking on it, and making the connection. Just sometimes saying that look, snap, connect out loud if I'm in a dither about something and I really want to hone in on recalling it. And then identifying memory aids of various kinds. That little notebook and pencil that I talked about earlier. I have a calendar that pops up in red, things that I know that I'm more likely to forget. Any little thing that you can find that helps you. Having a hook on the wall by your back door, painting it red, and hanging your car keys on there when you come in from the house. Things like that. Little things can just de-stress you and calm you. But the big thing at the bottom of that page I passed out is move and breathe. Aerobic is everything. Aerobic is just the best thing that you can do for yourselves. And you're going to hear more about that from Louise. But now, before we go, because I got the signal a bit ago, let's find out. I talked about nutrient-dense eating, and I hid a green pepper. Anybody remember where I hid that green pepper? Where?
Oh, it's by under the green shirt. Properly.
Okay, and how did you remember that?
Oh, because I like green peppers.
Okay. And as you said it, you said under the green chair too, so you made that connection. Good for you. And I also said that if you write something down, even if you don't hang on to it and look at it later, it helps. So I had a little colorful note. Where is it? Up there in the corner in this chair. I did this one time with a group, and I forgot myself where I had hidden things. There you go. And why did you have eye view of it? Is that part of why you remembered it?
I was just attracted, for some reason I was attracted to the color.
Okay.
Where they were.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, and just, some color attracts some people, sound attracts other people, kind of finding what that is. And then the third thing I hid was that rosemary that you can wait. And there it is. There you go. So with that, I said that sometimes I call this, what if you don't remember what you forgot? And that can happen, and don't be upset if it does. For example, if I was going to have lunch, with Louise, and we said, okay, let's meet at the Mustard Seed next Wednesday at noon. And she shows up, and I'm not there. And she calls me and says, Sharon, I thought we were going to have lunch at the Mustard Seed at noon today. Not only did I forget that lunch, I forgot that we even made the arrangement to have a lunch. And when that happens, that's really unsettling. But look back at, is there a medication issue? Is there a nutrient-dense eating issue? Is there a sleep issue? Have I not walked for 2 days? There's always, if you track back, there's reasons those things can happen. So with that, I will end. Any questions? Okay, thank you all for coming.